cultural change work takes time, and it requires a lot of different participants.
Can you give me an example of what this would look like if I was in, I don't know, East New York, in Brooklyn? How would I encounter the work of Breakthrough?
You know, if you're in some place like East New York in Brooklyn, or Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn, which is where I live, in fact, it might not be any different than if you were in Cape Town, South Africa. Part of the gift of technology is that it levels the playing field. Technology opens up the sort of the expansive space in which we can reach people. It means that somebody in East New York or somebody in Cape Town can go on YouTube and watch one of our videos. They can access some of our works through various media means. Part of what we want to be able to do is to tap into the human capacity and the human imagination to get people to think, to be, and do different. So the way that we seek to end violence impacting girls and women and marginalized people is by using creative means like arts, culture, and media to do that. So technology bridges a gap. It bridges a gap that typically is sort of left because of the space that is geography. And part of what we're able to do is to tap into that and reach people all over the world.
I think you and I would probably agree that human rights are human rights are human rights, wherever you are on the planet. But people do live in contexts.
They do.
It's in some societies, coming out would be met with a shrug. In some societies, it would be met with a lynching. There are different realities that people live in. It's what makes Breakthrough's work interesting, but also challenging if you're going to work in a cross-cultural context, no?
It's very challenging to ensure that we take the time, any of us who consider ourselves agents of social change, to deeply, deeply consider the context in which people live, the context in which people come to be and exist. It means that we can never, ever engage in work in our own communities or around the world with a sort of optic that does not allow for us to think about the particularities of people's lives. We all live differently. Our lives are shaped differently because of a variety of things, from the color of one's skin to one's gender presentation, to the amount of money one may or may not have access to a range of capitals, gender, age, ability. So what we try to do at Breakthrough, and what I think it's critical for us to do, is to remember context matters, and that it's easy for us to think that folks are moving in the world if they can move, similar to us because of the context that we bring to our work. But if we don't attend to the lived experiences of other people and the range of ways that their lives can be impacted and how their lives are shaped, then I think we won't be able to do our job in the best way possible.
When I think about what it was like to be a gay black man in New York in 1955 instead of 2019, I mean, there are generations of men who went to their graves closeted and hidden and ashamed. And now we can sit here and talk about this in 2019 in a way that would have been unimaginable 50 years ago, when I was a kid in Brooklyn, where you know, gay people could be beaten to death, and the cops just wouldn't care very much. They wouldn't investigate very hard. It would just be an unsolved cold case, and that would be that. I mean, the march goes on, and progress continues, even as we're well short of where we need to be as a people. And it's hard to describe that kind of situation.
Yeah, it's really hard to land on these sort of markers of success or markers of change. One must ask the question, well, success or change for who? So an example of that is, yes, within the context of the U.S., we have ascended to a place now where folk can legally marry, say, if they are queer or trans individuals. And it is also still the case that queer, trans, and gender nonconforming people in some cases face violent pushback. It is also the case that as we celebrate a rise of sort of representation of, say, trans women of color within popular culture, At the same time, we know that trans women of color experience high rates of homicide rates. So progress for who? It's easy to say, we, the sort of universal we, have made progress without thinking about who makes up the composite that makes up the we. Black folk who are LGBTQI might, may be able to, in the same places where the pride flag is raised, could still experience racism. Women who identify as lesbian or gender or whatever can still experience misogyny within queer-friendly spaces. And so one of the ways that I like to say that is we exist in a space where it's really easy to name whose feet are on our necks. It is not easy to name whose necks our feet are on. That second part, I think, is part of the work we're called to do, which is what we try to do at Breakthrough. The more radical work is after one realizes that their feet has been on somebody's neck, to take it off. And that's part of our work at Breakthrough, part of the work in which I'm part, helping folk to think really deeply in more nuanced ways about questions of progress, about ideas about transformation, about marginalization, and so forth.
The on-ramps at the same time, yes, resources are great. But the on-ramps are getting shallower all the time. Everybody's walking around with a video camera in their pocket, which we couldn't have imagined not all that long ago. Being a creator is now something that seems accessible for a lot of the impacted communities of interest that you're talking about. Is part of the design encouraging your audiences to be creators too?
Absolutely. One of the gifts of our sort of current times is the ways that media in various ways have been democratized. One of the lessons we learned, for instance, in the U.S. over the last several years with all of the iterations and sort of movements that spring up, from the movement to for Black Lives to Women's March to Me Too, is that these movements were sparked by sort of everyday folk who use things like their Twitter handles, who use their smartphones to record videos, and then they would share those videos on their social media pages, who would offer counter narratives that pushed back against narratives that had been derived from media, mainstream media. So much so, and I know this as someone working in media, that media often went to the folk on the ground who were creating to actually develop story angles. So the field has been democratized. Part of the work is to ensure that people who typically don't have access to microphones and to the sort of media sphere, who now can get access to that in their everyday lives, also have the tools and capacity to engage on their own terms. So one of the things I'm really excited about is an initiative that we are soon to embark on. It's a project that we're calling Her Stories. What we want to be able to do is to speak with and bring to the camera girls of color from across the U.S. To begin to give them space to speak about their lived experiences on their own terms. So we want to go around the country and give girls an opportunity to talk about what their lived experiences are in ways that so many groups have already begun to do, through policy, through research. This work has begun. African American Policy Forum, Girls for Gender and Equity, Novo Foundation. I mean, there are so many people doing this work within policy. We want to bring it to film. So these will be short docs. And imagine that in a platform where you can go onto a website and click on a map of the U.S., any part of the map, maybe the Southwest, and if you click on that, you might open up to discover a girl, maybe cis or transgender, who's talking about their lived experiences in the Southwest and how it's different or similar to somebody who's living, say, in the Northeast. And that's the work we want to do over the next few years. It's a big, audacious project, and we're really excited about it because we think not only can it influence the way that people think about the lived experiences of girls and women in the United States, but also that can influence policy, philanthropy, and so much else.